So infrastructure is a really important piece of a farm, and different kinds of agriculture need different kinds of infrastructure. Here, a lot of farms that new and beginning farmers would have access to are like this. They're old dairy farms. So oftentimes they have an old dairy barn of some sort. So in some cases, they can be very easily retrofitted into some other kind of agricultural purpose, or in some cases, it's really hard to get old barns and infrastructure to meet current agriculture's needs. So from the community standpoint and this busy road, the community really recognizes this barn, and the owners really wanted to keep the barn. Unfortunately, they had a carpenter and a structural engineer evaluate it, and unfortunately it had holes in the roof for a number of years, and there's a lot of rot, and unfortunately it has to be taken down. So if you were buying a piece of property or leasing a piece of property, that would be something, if you don't have the skills to be able to assess that you would need to bring in a professional to really take a look at the suitability for retrofitting it, or is it technically structurally sound, or what it might take to be able to retrofit it or to make it structurally sound and usable. The owners have agreed to take this down, so the leasee will not have to bear that cost, and that they're actually interested in working with the farmer that they lease it to on figuring out what would be the right kind of agricultural farm building to put here on the site. So, but we do have some other structures here as well. Also, if you think about assets to a property, there are a lot of different kinds of assets to the property. So there's a well that's over there, which I can talk about, but also right over here, there's an apple tree. There's some other old apple trees as part of an orchard. So to get somebody that could assess those to see whether or not they could be pruned and be productive. There's a grape arbor that also could be a potential asset. So if you, again, as a beginning farmer or as a trainer doing this session, if you don't have those skills, that might be something you would want to bring somebody in, somebody that knows about the vegetation, could actually give you an evaluation of the existing orchard that's there to see whether or not it's worth saving. So let's go over to the house and to these other outbuildings and talk about those. So as we look at our infrastructure improvements, obviously housing is really important. And unfortunately, in many communities, we have an affordable housing crisis in general, let alone as relates to affordable farm housing. So this particular parcel does have a house that is also going to be for rent, and it does need some work. It looks like one of your typical old grandma houses, and there was an old grandmother in there who unfortunately passed away. So they are interested in leasing that out and having that available with the farm parcel. Typically what we recommend is that it has a separate lease than the rest of the farm parcel, because of housing laws and regulations are typically different than what you might need for the rest of the lease. And also to have somebody, a plumber, electrician, someone that specializes in home evaluations like you would use for purchasing a home, to be able to evaluate it and tell you what may need to be done. So, but it is great that this does have housing. And even though, as I described, that the barn is coming down, it does have these 3 sheds here, which have been evaluated and are technically and structurally sound. It's just that they're not particularly attractive. This first one here was the old kind of workshop machine shed, and it has electrical service, it has water in there, and next to that is a garage. It has an electric garage door opener to it, so somebody could park a piece of equipment in there. And then the third building there is for farm storage. It has a ramp, which is nice. It has a barn door, and it actually has a root cellar, a functioning root cellar in it. So to me, somebody that, even though the barn is coming down, it hasn't been determined what the barn's going to be, it actually has some buildings that could be used right away for storing small equipment, maybe a walk behind tiller, mower, putting in, because there's electric in here, putting in some cold storage. You could put in a wash pad either out here or off to the side because there's water here. And again, there's water. The house is on sewer. There's sewer in the road. And there is a well. They recently replaced the well pump. And unfortunately, the pump capacity is only about 7 gallons per minute. So it's another important feature is when you think about water, animals need water, crops need water, a house needs water, you need water for processing, is what's the yield of the well, what's the capacity of the pump, where are there buried main lines. Again, this also had a line that went out to the barn, so that would be good if they take the barn down, that they keep that plumbing connection. But as far as irrigating the 13 acres, if this was going to be a vegetable operation, that's not going to be adequate. So that would be something, again, as a someone looking to lease or purchase the property, is to get as much information about the water source as possible, the pump, the yield, any piping, and then also the quality. You know, is there an issue with salts or bacteria? So definitely get a water test as well.